I still remember the look on my daughter-in-law's face when I reached for my newborn grandson that day. The disgust in her eyes when she insisted I wear disposable gloves before touching him as if my hands, calloused from decades of cooking and cleaning for my family, were somehow unfit to touch her precious child. That moment, standing in that sterile hospital room while my husband and son remained silent witnesses to my humiliation, was the first crack in the foundation of my life. A life I had spent 30 years building, only to discover it was made of sand. For 3 decades, I had been Helen Dawson, dutiful wife to Frank, devoted mother to Jason, and later, the primary caregiver to Frank's aging mother. I married at 20, had Jason at 21, and from that moment forward, I became what everyone needed me to be, a tireless machine. I cooked elaborate meals that were devoured without thanks, laundered clothes that were soiled without thought, and maintained a home that was inhabited but never truly appreciated. My existence had become background noise in their lives, essential but invisible. When Amber came into Jason's life, I welcomed her with open arms and an open heart. I stayed up late making homemade soups when she gave birth to my grandson, only to watch her pour them straight into the trash while calling me nothing more than the housemaid. My husband and son stood by like statues, their silence a betrayal more painful than any words could have been. "Can you stop dragging up the past already?" Jason snapped when I dared to mention how I felt. Amber just had a baby. Her emotions are unstable. That day, something inside me finally broke. The woman who had spent 30 years putting everyone else first decided it was time to put herself first. I booked a flight and packed my bags, ignoring their incredulous reactions. "You're going on a trip right after Amber gave birth. Have you completely lost your mind?" They looked at me as if I'd committed some unforgivable crime, but the only crime had been against myself, allowing my identity to be swallowed by the demands and expectations of others until there was nothing left. My journey took me to the Montana Plains, a place I'd always dreamed of visiting. The vast sky stretched endlessly above me, and for the first time in decades, I could breathe. Each morning, I woke at my own pace, spent my days horseback riding or simply walking through nature, and fell into deep, uninterrupted sleep each night. Meanwhile, back home, chaos reigned. Without me to care for Frank's mother, cook their meals, and manage the household, the family structure I had maintained began to crumble. Frank's messages grew increasingly desperate. At first, he was furious. "Helen, what exactly are you doing? Cynthia and I are close." "Delete that comment." Then, as days turned into weeks, his tone changed. "Helen, do you even care about our marriage anymore?" When I directly asked when his affair with Cynthia had begun, his brief silence told me everything I needed to know. Later, I would discover they had been involved for 5 years, a betrayal that should have crushed me, but instead only confirmed what I already suspected: I had never truly been seen or valued. As I reconnected with myself, I also reconnected with my family. My brother Mike, my parents, and my best friend Susan stood firmly by my side, reminding me of the strong, capable woman I had once been, the woman who could emerge again. When Frank froze my bank accounts in a petty attempt to force me home, Susan wired me money without hesitation and arranged for me to meet with the best divorce attorney in the city. My father's words became my mantra: "Don't be afraid. If you've made up your mind, then don't look back. Just keep going." After 30 days of my absence, Frank's assistant delivered his ultimatum return within 2 days or receive divorce papers. I responded calmly, "Perfect. My attorney has already sent his notice. I didn't return to Frank's mansion, but instead went to the modest home my parents had left me. Every square inch belonged to me, not Frank, not Jason, just me. I sold all the designer dresses, handbags, and jewelry Frank had bought me over the years, items that had never truly been for me, but rather for the perfect image of a trophy wife he wanted to project. In the divorce proceedings, I held my ground. Frank, I've spent over 2 decades caring for you and your son, and another 10 looking after your mother. I've managed every petty, thankless task in your household. You don't have to acknowledge any of it, but that doesn't mean my contributions amount to nothing. I asked for what I deserved: the house, the car, and fair compensation for the years I'd spent helping build his now successful company. In the aftermath, Jason and Frank's lives unraveled further. Without me, they discovered that Cynthia, the woman Frank had showered with money and affection at my expense, couldn't or wouldn't perform even the most basic caregiving tasks. When left alone with Frank's mother for just 2 days, her neglect led to the elderly woman falling and being injured, resulting in a visit from social services. Even Amber began to see the truth about her mother as Cynthia helped herself to Amber's designer clothes, saying, "You just had a baby. Your figure's not back yet. What's the point in keeping these months past?" And both Frank and Jason attempted numerous reconciliations. They appeared at the airport with flowers when I returned from vacation with my parents. "Mom, I'm sorry. I really mean it this time," Jason said tearfully. But when I didn't immediately agree to return, his true colors showed through. "How long do you plan to keep this whole drama going?" I tossed the flowers in the trash and walked away. As Mike pointedly told them, if you really understood what you did wrong, you wouldn't talk to your mom like that. And today, at 50 years old, I finally reclaimed my life. Susan and I opened our own studio on New Year's Day, and we celebrated with champagne in the garden, fireworks blooming across the city's skyline. "Congratulations on finding yourself again," she toasted. "May the rest of your life belong only to you." Frank still asks occasionally if I'd ever consider remarrying him. My answer remains unchanged: not in this lifetime. I would never again wear the chains of marriage for anyone. From now on, I am simply me, not someone's wife, not someone's mother, just a woman who has finally come home to herself and can breathe freely at last. I can still feel the sting of humiliation as Amber looked at me with disgust when I offered to change my newborn grandson's diaper. "Did you even wash your hands?" she asked, her voice dripping with contempt. My son and husband stood silently by, witnessing my degradation without a single word of defense. Instead, they reminded me to take good care of her, as if I were nothing more than hired help rather than family. That moment in the hospital room crystallized 30 years of being invisible in my own home. From the very beginning, I wasn't even deemed important enough to be informed when Amber went into labor. I only discovered my grandson had been born through someone outside the family. Despite this slight, I swallowed my hurt and rushed to the hospital, where I remained for 24 straight hours, eager to help in any way I could. I stayed up late making homemade soup, carefully following traditional recipes known to help new mothers recover. My reward: watching Amber pour it directly into the trash while declaring I was nothing more than the housemaid. The painful truth was that both my daughter-in-law and her mother, Cynthia, viewed me as beneath them. When I tried to hold my newborn grandson, Amber insisted I wear disposable gloves first. "You're in the kitchen all day," my son explained, defending her. "You reek of grease and smoke. It's nauseating. Even I can't stand the smell, let alone a newborn. The bitter irony wasn't lost on me. My cooking skills were demanded for their meals, but the same hands that prepared their food were somehow deemed too unclean to touch the baby. Cynthia's presence only magnified my invisibility. When she spent barely a day helping with the baby, Jason and Frank immediately worried about her becoming exhausted. They hired 2 full-time nannies to assist her, a luxury never extended to me despite my round-the-clock care for over 20 days. Cynthia's been taking care of Amber every day and she's exhausted, Frank explained. As if my own exhaustion didn't merit acknowledgement. The disparity in treatment was glaring. Cynthia was treated like royalty while I was relegated to the role of servant. The inequality extended beyond emotional support to financial matters. Frank gave me no more than $3,000 a month for household expenses, scrutinizing every purchase and accusing me of wastefulness if I bought something for myself. Yet I discovered he had given Cynthia a check for $20,000 after she spent just 15 minutes visiting his mother in the hospital. "Pick out something nice for Amber and yourself," he told her casually. "You've worked hard lately." This disparate treatment wasn't just hurtful, it was a slap in the face after decades of loyalty. Even when I finally stood up for myself, neither Frank nor Jason could see beyond their entitlement. "Mom, can you not be so sensitive?" Jason asked dismissively. "Amber's already unhappy with you. Everyone knows postpartum care is the priority here." When I expressed my feelings about being treated like staff rather than family, Frank coldly instructed me to calm down before ordering me to make more vegetable soup tonight and roast a chicken, have it at the hospital by 6 sharp. Their demands came without a hint of gratitude or recognition of my humanity. The breaking point came when I was 5 minutes late delivering dinner to the hospital. Jason called, his voice sharp with anger. "Where's the dinner? What the hell are you trying to pull?" That moment crystallized my decision. "I'm your mother, not your maid," I replied calmly. "If your wife didn't eat, then what the hell are you doing as her husband? What about your beloved mother-in-law? What's she doing?" His stunned silence spoke volumes. He had never heard me speak to him like that in his entire life. Amber's social media posts only confirmed how I was perceived. She shared photos of Frank, a man who had never touched a frying pan in our 30 years of marriage, cooking elaborate meals for Cynthia. The comments section overflowed with praise for him, while my decades of domestic labor remained invisible. When I commented on the irony of discovering my husband's culinary certificate after 20 years, Frank stormed home in a rage, flipping the table and scattering my breakfast across the floor. In that moment, I realized I was as disposable to him as those food scraps. Their true colors showed even more clearly once I left. Jason sent over 30 messages detailing how to care for Amber and Cynthia, remembering every tiny preference his wife and mother-in-law had, though he had never once remembered my birthday. "If Amber complains about not wanting your food again," he instructed, "just cook it early and leave it on the table before she sees you. If you're not around, she'll probably eat it." The casual cruelty of expecting me to hide while they enjoyed my cooking was the final confirmation that I was nothing more than a convenient servant in their eyes. The contrast became even more apparent when neither of them could manage without me. Cynthia, who had been treated like a queen, proved useless at basic caregiving tasks. When left alone with Frank's mother for just 2 days, her neglect led to the elderly woman falling and getting injured. Frank's mother, who suffered from dementia and was partially paralyzed, couldn't care for herself, yet Cynthia refused to clean up when there was an accident. claiming, "I've never cared for a sick person. I have no experience." My absence revealed the truth. They didn't miss me. They missed my service. Frank tried to lure me back with unfrozen bank accounts and wired money. "From now on, you handle the household finances. I've already unfrozen your accounts and wired you $1 million. Spend it however you like," he offered, as if money could erase years of disrespect. Jason tearfully apologized, claiming, "Without you, this family can't run." But I saw through their performance. They didn't want their wife and mother back. They wanted their maid, cook, and caretaker to return to her post. Today, I stand firm in my decision to value myself after decades of being devalued, as my friend Susan toasted on the opening night of our new business venture. Congratulations on finding yourself again. May the rest of your life belong only to you. After 30 years of being treated as less than human by those who should have valued me most, I finally reclaimed my dignity, and I'm never going back. The silence was deafening. Standing in that sterile hospital room, I watched my daughter-in-law Amber look at me with disgust as I reached toward my newborn grandson. "Did you even wash your hands?" she asked, her voice sharp with contempt. What hurt more than her words was the complete absence of any defense from the two men who should have protected me. My husband Frank and my son Jason stood motionless, as if they'd suddenly gone deaf and blind. Instead of speaking up, they reminded me to take good care of her. In that moment, I understood that after 30 years of marriage and motherhood, I was completely alone. This wasn't the first betrayal, but it was the most painful. The day Amber gave birth, no one in the family bothered to tell me. I found out from someone outside our circle, yet I swallowed my disappointment and rushed to the hospital anyway. I stayed outside that room for 24 straight hours, making homemade soup in the middle of the night, determined to be helpful despite being overlooked. When Amber poured my carefully prepared soup directly into the trash while calling me nothing more than the housemaid, my husband and son once again remained silent witnesses to my humiliation. "Mom, can you stop dragging up the past already?" Jason snapped when I dared to mention how I felt. "Amber just had a baby. Her emotions are unstable. If I criticize her over something like that and it affects her milk supply, then what?" His priorities were crystal clear, and I ranked far below his wife's comfort. The man I had raised from infancy, nursed through illnesses, and supported through every milestone of his life couldn't spare a single word in my defense when I was being treated like dirt. Frank wasn't any better. When I expressed my hurt feelings, his response was cold and dismissive. "You're too emotional right now. This isn't the time to talk. Calm yourself down." Then, without missing a beat, he continued, "Make more of that vegetable soup tonight and roast a chicken. Have it at the hospital by 6 sharp. Not a word about how Amber had treated me. Not a moment of understanding, just more demands for my service. When I was 5 minutes late delivering dinner one evening, Jason called in a rage. "Where's the dinner? What the hell are you trying to pull?" Even then, Frank did nothing to rein in our son's disrespect. The depth of their betrayal became even clearer when I discovered Frank had been carrying on an affair with Amber's mother, Cynthia, for years. All those business trips, all those late nights at the office, they suddenly made sense. While I was managing his household, raising his son, and later caring for his aging mother, Frank was investing his time, attention, and our money in another woman. When I directly asked him, "When did you and Cynthia start?" his brief silence before exploding in anger told me everything I needed to know. What made it worse was seeing how differently Frank treated Cynthia compared to me. I watched from social media as Frank, who had never so much as touched a frying pan during our 30 years of marriage, cooked elaborate meals for her. One photo showed a lavish dinner he'd prepared himself. Another showed him carefully brewing coffee for Cynthia in the morning. The comments section overflowed with praise and admiration for him. I had spent 3 decades cooking for this man without a word of appreciation. Yet Cynthia received gourmet meals and public recognition. When I finally decided I'd had enough and booked a trip to Montana, both Frank and Jason reacted with disbelief and anger. "You're going on a trip right after Amber gave birth. Have you completely lost your mind?" They looked at me as if I'd committed some unforgivable crime. My son, married less than 6 months, even threatened to stop taking care of me in the future. "I'm your only son. Aren't you afraid I might stop taking care of you?" he asked, revealing just how conditional his love had always been. Frank's betrayal extended beyond the emotional to the financial. After I left, he froze all my bank accounts that contained money I had helped him earn through years of supporting his business ventures and managing his social obligations. 20 years, I've spoiled you too much," he said smugly over the phone. "You want a divorce? Fine. Let me show you what life after divorce really feels like." This from the man who had given Cynthia a check for $20,000 after she spent 15 minutes visiting his mother in the hospital, while I received a mere $3,000 monthly allowance after decades of marriage, even as their lives fell apart without me, as neither Frank nor Jason could manage the household. As Frank's mother's health deteriorated without my care, as Amber struggled with new motherhood without my guidance, they still couldn't truly acknowledge how they had failed me. Jason, who sent me over 30 messages detailing how to care for Amber and Cynthia, remembering every tiny preference they had, though he had never once remembered my birthday, still had the audacity to act as if I was creating drama by leaving. Months later, when they finally came crawling back, begging me to return, I saw through their performance. "Mom, I'm sorry. I really mean it this time," Jason said tearfully at the airport. But when I didn't immediately agree to return, his mask slipped. "How long do you plan to keep this whole drama going?" As my brother Mike pointedly told them, "If you really understood what you did wrong, you wouldn't talk to your mom like that." Frank tried to lure me back with unfrozen bank accounts and wired money. "From now on, you handle the household finances," he promised, as if money could erase years of disrespect and betrayal. But I had finally seen the truth to these men. I was not a person with feelings and dignity. I was a function, a role, a convenience. They didn't miss me. They missed my service. Today, I stand firm in my decision to value myself after decades of being devalued by the very people who should have protected me most. As I sip champagne with my friend Susan on the opening night of our new business venture, watching fireworks bloom across the city skyline, I know I've made the right choice. "Congratulations on finding yourself again," she toasts. "May the rest of your life belong only to you." After 30 years of silent betrayals, I've finally found my voice, and I'm using it to say, never again. I never planned to leave. For 30 years, I had been the foundation of our family cooking, cleaning, nurturing, sacrificing all while fading further into the background of my own life. But that day in the hospital room, as I watched my daughter-in-law Amber look at me with disgust when I offered to change my grandson's diaper, something inside me finally broke. "Did you even wash your hands?" she asked, her voice dripping with contempt. My husband Frank and son Jason stood by in silence. Not a word of defense for the woman who had given them everything. Instead, they reminded me to take good care of her, as if I were the hired help rather than family. Looking back, I realize I should have left years ago. I married Frank when I was 20, had Jason at 21, And from that moment forward, I surrendered my identity to become what everyone else needed. I gave up my promising career to become a full-time homemaker because Frank wanted a traditional wife. I helped him build his company from the ground up, hosting clients, managing social events, standing by his side through every struggle when he had nothing but empty hands and empty promises. For 3 decades, I ran our household like a tireless machine, cooking, cleaning, organizing, yet all my efforts were treated as background noise in their lives. Fine, I thought that day in the hospital. If none of them see me as worth a shred of respect, then I have nothing left to hold on to. And the next morning, I packed my bags and booked a trip to Montana, a place I had always longed to visit. When Frank and Jason discovered my plans, they were incredulous. "You're going on a trip right after Amber gave birth. Have you completely lost your mind?" They glared at me like I'd committed some unforgivable crime, while I felt nothing but a deep, aching emptiness. "Mom, what were you thinking?" Jason demanded. "Amber's still recovering, and this is when she needs you most. She's going to hate you for the rest of her life." I looked at my son, this person I had raised with everything I had, and asked a simple question. Aside from being the one who cooks your meals and scrubs your laundry like a living maid, have you ever once acknowledged me as your mother to anyone? The truth poured out of me. I've been the one looking after your newborn around the clock for over 20 days. Has anyone in this house ever asked if I'm tired? And the moment I leave for one single day, you hire 2 full-time nannies to help Cynthia take care of the baby. I pointed out how they were already worried about Cynthia being exhausted after spending barely a day helping. While my exhaustion didn't even register on their radar, Jason's response was telling. "Mom, can you not be so sensitive? Amber's already unhappy with you. Everyone knows postpartum care is the priority here." Then came the threat. "I'm your only son. Aren't you afraid I might stop taking care of you in the future?" Married less than 6 months, and he was already thinking about cutting me off. What a joke. This was my son, revealing his true nature with brutal clarity. Frank wasn't any better. "Helen, what do you want from us? Are you trying to tear this whole family apart?" he asked, as if I were the problem. Then, without missing a beat, he gave me orders. "Make more of that vegetable soup tonight and roast a chicken. Have it at the hospital by 6 sharp. Postpartum mothers need proper nutrition." No acknowledgement of my feelings. No word about how Amber had treated me, just more demands for my service. That evening, when I failed to deliver dinner on time, Jason called, furious. "Where's the dinner? What the hell are you trying to pull?" I answered quietly, but firmly. "I'm your mother, not your maid. If your wife didn't eat, then what the hell are you doing as her husband? What about your beloved mother-in-law? What's she doing? Are you suddenly disabled? Or are you just too damn stingy to buy your wife a meal?" He was stunned. He'd never heard me speak to him like that in his entire life. I booked a flight for 5 days later and started packing. Frank sent his driver to check on me, clearly concerned I might actually follow through with my plans. When I took his call, he was already irritated. "Helen, could you stop with the theatrics? It's been the whole damn afternoon. Are you still not done? You know Cynthia can't stand the smell of grease, but she loves your lemon roast chicken. Are you seriously going to let her go hungry on purpose?" The anger I'd managed to bottle up flared again. "Tell me, Frank, am I your wife, or is she can't stand kitchen smells, so I'm supposed to slave away for her. Do I owe her something? If you care so much about her stomach, go cook for her yourself." His response, "Helen, you've completely lost your mind. You're delusional. Get help." Then he hung up. That Tuesday, I walked through the airport security checkpoint despite Jason's desperate attempts to stop me. He even brought my elderly mother in a wheelchair, hoping to manipulate me into staying. "Grandma, please talk some sense into my mom. Something's clearly wrong with her. She picked the worst possible time to go on vacation." I couldn't help but slap him across the face the first time I had ever struck him in his 22 years of life. My mother, to my surprise, slapped him on the other cheek. "This slap is for your mom," she said. "How could I have raised such an ungrateful brat like you? In Montana, I discovered a different kind of life. The air was so clean it felt like it had just been washed, and the sky stretched endlessly, every day. I visited 1 or 2 sightseeing spots and spent the rest of my time horseback riding and walking on the ranch. At night, I sat on the grass, gazing at the stars, feeling as though I had returned to my childhood. For the first time in decades, I slept soundly, going to bed at 10 and waking naturally at 7. The slow, peaceful rhythm was exactly what I'd longed for in my younger years. Meanwhile, chaos reigned at home. Without me, neither Frank nor Jason could manage the household or care for Frank's elderly mother. Cynthia proved useless at basic caregiving tasks, refusing to clean up when Frank's mother had an accident and leaving the poor woman to fall and injure herself when left alone for just 2 days. By the time I returned from my trip 30 days later, both men were desperate for my return, not because they missed me, but because they missed what I did for them. "Helen, I really know I've made a mistake. Please forgive me. Can you come back?" Frank pleaded. Jason added, sobbing uncontrollably. "Mom, I'm sorry. I realize now without you this family can't run." But I remained unmoved. "You don't want me back. I told them plainly. You just want your maid. If I go back, give it 2 months at most, and everything will return to the way it was." Today, I'm 50 years old, and it took me half a lifetime to finally see who they truly are, selfish to the core. I gave the best years of my life to that household. Whatever time I have left, I'm going to make it mine bold, vivid, uncompromising. With my friend Susan, I've opened our own studio, building a business and a life that belongs entirely to me. Frank still asks if I'd ever consider remarrying him. My answer remains unchanged, not in this lifetime. From now on, I am simply me, not someone's wife, not someone's mother, not someone's maid, just a woman who has finally come home to herself and can breathe freely at last. The rumors had circulated for years, but I had always chosen to ignore them. People whispered that they'd seen Frank with other women, traveling together, speaking intimately. But at home, he always played the devoted family man, rarely staying out late, participating in household activities. So, I dismissed the gossip as nothing more than jealous speculation about my handsome, successful husband. Frank had always been attractive, a classic, rugged American face with a body that stayed fit over the years, never gaining weight. It was his appearance that had drawn me to him in the first place, back when I was just 20 and full of dreams. I gave up everything to marry him, even when everyone in my family was against it. He has nothing, they warned me, just empty hands and empty promises. But I was in love, and I believed in him. I stayed by his side through every struggle, helped him build his company from nothing, became the full-time homemaker he wanted when his business finally took off. The night that changed everything came seemingly out of nowhere. It was Jason's engagement party, a celebration that should have been filled with nothing but joy. As I moved through our crowded home, carrying a tray of hors d'oeuvres I'd spent hours preparing, I happened to pass by a partially open door. Inside, relatives were speaking in hushed tones, not realizing I was within earshot. "Frank's been having an affair with Cynthia for years," one voice said matter-of-factly. "After getting bored with her, he introduced Cynthia's daughter to his son, keeping Cynthia close this way. My God, he's disgusting." "Keep it down," another warned. "Don't let Helen hear." But the words had already cut deep, embedding themselves in my heart. I stood frozen, the tray suddenly heavy in my hands, as everything I had refused to think about over the years clicked into place. My instincts had been right. All along, those rumors weren't just baseless gossip. The way Frank always seemed overly attentive to Cynthia, the special treatment she received, the subtle looks exchanged between them. I had deliberately blinded myself to the signs. I somehow made it through the rest of the evening, mechanical smiles plastered on my face as I served drinks and cleared plates. No one noticed anything amiss. They were all too accustomed to me fading into the background of my own home. That night, lying beside Frank in our bed, I studied his sleeping face and wondered how many lies it had told me over the years. Still, I said nothing. Part of me hoped it wasn't true, that I had misheard or misunderstood. But the seeds of doubt had been planted, and they grew with every interaction I observed between Frank and Cynthia after that night. The way his eyes lingered on her a moment too long, the way she touched his arm with familiar ease, the private conversations that ended abruptly when I entered a room. Then came the day Amber gave birth, and no one bothered to tell me. I only found out from someone outside the family, rushing to the hospital to find Cynthia already installed as the doting grandmother, while I was treated like an inconvenient afterthought. When Amber insisted I wear disposable gloves before touching my own grandson, declaring me filthy from my cooking, both Frank and Jason stood by in silence. Not a word of defense for the woman who had cooked their meals and laundered their clothes for decades. I finally reached my breaking point a month later, after I had left on my trip to Montana. On the 8th day, Frank's assistant called, asking when I'd be coming home. "I'll return when I feel like it," I answered, suddenly aware of the freedom in my voice. Before long, Jason called, shouting immediately, "Mom, it's been 8 days. How much longer are you going to stay? Have you had enough fun? The baby's crying every day, and Amber and Cynthia can't take care of him." And I hung up without a second thought. On the 10th day, Frank called again, his voice as calm as if he were discussing business. This was my moment. With my heart pounding but my voice steady, I asked directly, "When did you and Cynthia start?" There was a brief, telling silence on the other end before he erupted. "Have you lost your mind? You're just making trouble." But I didn't need to press further. His reaction, not surprise or confusion, but immediate anger, confirmed everything. In that moment, the last thread of our marriage snapped clean. More evidence of their relationship emerged as my trip continued. On social media, I watched as Frank, who had never so much as touched a frying pan during our 30 years of marriage, cooked elaborate meals for Cynthia. One photo showed a lavish dinner he'd prepared himself with the freshest ingredients. Another showed him carefully brewing coffee for her in the morning. The comment section overflowed with praise for him, as if this were normal behavior and not the glaring evidence of his betrayal. "Married over 20 years, I commented under the post. "And this is the first time I've learned my husband has a culinary certificate. What a shame. I've never had the privilege of tasting Frank's cooking." Not long after, Frank stormed through our front door, slamming it shut behind him. "Helen, what the hell are you trying to do?" he demanded. I calmly set down my coffee and looked at him. That's a question I should be asking you. He ripped off his tie and threw it hard onto the floor. We've been together for 30 years. What do you have to be jealous about? You didn't want to cook for Cynthia, so I did. Why are you acting crazy about it? Cynthia's crying now, thanks to you. Crying, I said with a quiet laugh. What exactly did I say that wasn't true? Helen. He flipped the table. My breakfast scattered across the floor, a mess of eggs, toast, and coffee lying there like discarded scraps. In that moment, it struck me this was exactly how Frank saw me. Just like that breakfast. Disposable, unimportant, easily tossed aside when I dared to question him. Later, when I finally filed for divorce, Frank tried to manipulate me with false remorse. Helen, how did we end up like this? He asked outside the courthouse, his expression carefully crafted to appear conflicted. If you felt the allowance I gave you wasn't enough, I can increase it. If housework's too tiring, we'll hire help. I didn't respond. I just stared at him with a mocking smile. His brows tightened. Are you really that set on leaving? I looked at him, my voice quiet but sharp. Did you and Cynthia meet 5 years ago? His eyes flickered, just for a moment, another silent confession. I turned and started walking up the courthouse steps. Behind me, he tried again. Fine, I admit we met 5 years ago, but there was nothing improper. You don't trust me. Can't you at least trust Amber's father? But men never tell the whole truth. I knew exactly who held power in Cynthia's family. Her father was a mild-mannered, indecisive man who would rather pretend to be deaf than confront uncomfortable truths. Frank likely saw the same weakness in him that he saw in me, someone who would look the other way rather than disrupt the peace. The final piece fell into place the day Frank's sister Tina called me. Helen, I'm sorry for what I said earlier. Frank's a bastard. He actually yelled at me over that woman, even threatened to hit me. He said you're just the servant we hired to take care of the house, and that woman is the princess he's spoiling. Geen, the betrayal wasn't just the affair, it was the years of disrespect, the systematic devaluation of my contributions, the casual cruelty of treating me like a disposable convenience while elevating another woman to the status of royalty. Frank had never seen me as an equal partner worthy of loyalty and respect. To him, I was function, not person valuable only for what I could do, not for who I was. After the divorce was finalized, Frank's life slowly unraveled. Without me to run his household and manage his social obligations, he floundered. Cynthia, it turned out, had no interest in being a caregiver or homemaker. When Frank's mother became ill, Cynthia's neglect led to the elderly woman falling and being injured. Frank found himself having to cook his own meals, manage his own appointments, and face the consequences of his choices. Months later, when he came crawling back, begging me to return, I felt nothing but a calm certainty that I had made the right decision. Helen, I really know I've made a mistake, he pleaded. Please forgive me. Can you come back? His remorse wasn't for betraying me. It was for losing the convenience I had provided. He didn't want his wife back. He wanted his housekeeper. Today, I'm building a new life that belongs entirely to me. As my friend Susan and I celebrated the opening of our studio on New Year's Day, watching fireworks bloom across the city skyline, she raised her glass with a smile. Congratulations on finding yourself again. May the rest of your life belong only to you. Frank still asks occasionally if I'd ever consider remarrying him. My answer remains unchanged, not in this lifetime. The betrayal I never expected became the freedom I never knew I needed. My absence was only supposed to last a few days, but as I breathed in the clean Montana air, watching the endless sky stretch above me, I felt something I hadn't experienced in decades: peace. For 30 years, I had been the invisible foundation of our family, cooking meals that were devoured without thanks, washing clothes that were soiled without thought, and managing a household that ran so smoothly no one noticed the effort behind it. Now, as I sat each evening on the ranch, watching stars appear one by one, I received increasingly frantic calls from the family that had taken me for granted. Their perfectly ordered world was crumbling without me, and I couldn't help but feel a bittersweet satisfaction. The first sign of trouble came on the 8th day of my trip. Frank's assistant called, his voice carefully neutral but tinged with urgency. "Mrs. Dawson, when will you be coming home?" I lazily replied, "I'll return when I feel like it," savoring the freedom in those words. Within hours, Jason called, his voice immediately sharp with frustration. "Mom, it's been 8 days. How much longer are you going to stay? Have you had enough fun? The baby's crying every day, and Amber and Cynthia can't take care of him. The nanny's food is awful." I hung up without a second thought, realizing that my son wasn't concerned about my well-being. He simply wanted his household manager back. By the 20th day, the calls had become desperate. Tina, Frank's sister, phoned me in tears. "Helen, when are you coming back? Mom's been making a scene every day, yelling at night, refusing to eat. We're all losing our minds." They'd been caring for Frank's mother for just over 20 days and were already at their breaking point. I had cared for her for 10 years without complaint. "Tina," I responded directly, "your mom is your responsibility, not mine. Doesn't your brother always say Cynthia is the perfect woman for him? Why doesn't he let her take care of your mom?" To my surprise, Tina didn't argue. Later, she called back, her tone completely transformed. "Helen, I'm sorry for what I said earlier. Frank's a bastard. He actually yelled at me over that woman, even threatened to hit me. He said you're just the servant they hired to take care of the house, and that woman is the princess he's spoiling." Her unexpected support revealed just how quickly family dynamics had deteriorated in my absence. Meanwhile, I was discovering a new way of living. Every night, I went to bed at 10 Hosiers, falling into a deep, uninterrupted sleep until 700 the next morning. I had never slept so soundly before. Each day, I visited beautiful sightseeing spots, went horseback riding, and walked through the ranch, enjoying the warm sunshine and peaceful nature. This slow, tranquil life was exactly what I'd longed for when I was younger, before I surrendered myself to the endless demands of being Frank's wife and Jason's mother. Back home, chaos reigned. Without me to cook, clean, and manage the household, Frank turned to Cynthia, expecting her to step into my role. But Cynthia, who had always been treated like royalty, had no interest in being anyone's housekeeper. She moved into Jason and Amber's luxury apartment, but spent her days at the spa or shopping, completely ignoring anything related to the household. When Amber asked her for help with the baby, Cynthia would complain about feeling unwell and refuse. When asked to buy anything, she'd claim she didn't have money, despite the generous checks Frank had given her. Jason, helpless and frustrated, hired a nanny, but Cynthia found endless reasons to complain. She thought the nanny's salary was too high and accused the woman of eating more than her share of food, watching her like she was a thief. The situation reached a breaking point when Cynthia, without thinking, gave my 3-month-old grandson egg yolk. The baby had a severe allergic reaction and had to be hospitalized. When the doctor questioned what happened, Cynthia blamed the nanny, accusing her of not watching the child carefully enough. The nanny, livid at being falsely accused, quit on the spot. Jason and Amber had a huge argument. Amber tried to defend her mother, but Jason had finally reached his limit. "If anything happens to the baby, I'll go after your mother," he threatened. Cynthia ran crying to Frank, but to everyone's surprise, he sided with Jason. The family structure I had maintained for decades was collapsing without my stabilizing presence. The most telling incident came when Frank had to go on a business trip, leaving his mother in Cynthia's care for just 2 days. Frank's mother, who suffered from dementia and was partially paralyzed, couldn't care for herself. On the first day, Cynthia called a caregiver to handle the situation. When the elderly woman had an accident in bed, she refused to clean it up herself. On the second day, Cynthia spent all her time on her phone, completely neglecting Frank's mother. The poor woman tried to get out of bed on her own, fell, and couldn't move, screaming in pain. The incident caught the attention of neighbors, and social services was notified. When Frank returned and discovered what had happened, even Cynthia's charm couldn't deflect his anger. She tried to justify herself. "I've never cared for a sick person. I have no experience. I couldn't take care of her." The woman who had been placed on a pedestal, the woman Frank had given a $20,000 check for spending 15 minutes visiting his mother in the hospital, couldn't handle even the most basic caregiving tasks that I had performed flawlessly for a decade. Frank and Jason's lives had turned into utter chaos without me. Their comfortable, well-ordered existence depended entirely on my invisible labor they had never acknowledged or appreciated until it was gone. On the 30th day of my absence, Frank's assistant delivered his ultimatum return within 2 days or receive divorce papers. I responded calmly. "Perfect. My attorney has already sent his notice." I had no intention of returning to a home where I was valued only for my utility. After our divorce was finalized, Frank decided to ask Cynthia to move out of his house. He began remodeling the entire place based on my preferences, as if physical changes could somehow lure me back. "Helen," he pleaded, "I was blind before. That money I gave to Cynthia, I'm taking it back. From now on, you handle the household finances. I've already unfrozen your accounts and wired you $1 million. Spend it however you like." But I remained unmoved. I had already given the best 20 years of my life to that household. Whatever time I had left was going to be mind-bold, vivid, uncompromising. Marriage once was enough to learn my lesson. I had no intention of jumping back into that fire. Months later, Frank and Jason somehow discovered my return flight details after a vacation with my parents. They showed up at the airport in suits, holding bouquets, trying to put on their best performance. Jason ran up to me, teary-eyed, and hugged me tight. "Mom, I'm sorry. I really mean it this time. You did everything for me, and I just took it for granted." Frank followed with a low voice. "If you've come home, then come home for real. From now on, you make the rules." I took the flowers, but didn't go with them. Jason, confused by my refusal, let his mask slip. "Mom, we both apologized. It's been over half a year since you started this whole drama. How long do you plan to keep it going?" I tossed the flowers into the trash and walked away. Finally understanding that they didn't want me back. They wanted their housekeeper, their cook, their caretaker, the woman who made their lives run smoothly without recognition or appreciation. On New Year's Day, Susan and I officially opened our studio. That night, we sat in the garden sipping champagne, music playing softly, fireworks blooming across the city's skyline. She raised her glass with a smile. Congratulations on finding yourself again. May the rest of your life belong only to you. I clinked glasses with her, smiling in silence, knowing that the chaos my absence had created wasn't my responsibility to fix. They had built their lives on my labor without acknowledging its value. Now they could learn to manage without it. Today, Frank still asks if I'd ever consider remarrying him. My answer remains unchanged, not in this lifetime. The collapse of their perfectly ordered world without me wasn't a tragedy, it was a revelation. Showing them and me exactly how much I had given and how little they had appreciated it. I would never again pour myself into a role that diminished me. From now on, I am simply me, not anyone's wife, not anyone's mother, not anyone's housekeeper, just a woman who has finally come home to herself and can breathe freely at last. I was 50 years old when I finally found the courage to walk away from my marriage. For 3 decades, I had been Helen Dawson, devoted wife to Frank, selfless mother to Jason, and more recently, the primary caregiver to Frank's aging mother. I had surrendered my identity, my ambitions, and my voice to become the perfect homemaker my husband desired. I married Frank when I was just 20, had Jason at 21, and from that moment forward, I became what everyone needed me to be, the silent foundation upon which their lives were built. The breaking point came in that sterile hospital room, watching my daughter-in-law Amber look at me with disgust when I offered to change my newborn grandson's diaper. "Did you even wash your hands?" she asked, her voice dripping with contempt. My husband and son stood by in silence, not a word of defense for the woman who had given them everything. Something inside me finally snapped. If this was all the respect I deserved after 30 years of sacrifice, then I had nothing left to hold on to. The decision to file for divorce wasn't impulsive. It was the culmination of years of being invisible, undervalued, and taken for granted. I had given up a promising career to become a full-time homemaker because Frank wanted a traditional wife. I had helped him build his company from the ground up, hosting clients, managing social events, standing by his side through every struggle when he had nothing but empty hands and empty promises. For years, my contributions had been treated as background noise, expected but never appreciated. I've been taking care of you and this family for 30 years, and you've treated me like I'm invisible. I told Frank when he called me during my trip to Montana, furious that I wasn't home cooking for his mother-in-law. Now that your maid is gone, you're in a panic. But let me make it clear, I am not your servant. His stunned silence spoke volumes. He had never imagined I would find the courage to stand up for myself. The divorce process was surprisingly smooth, almost suspiciously so. As I walked out of the courthouse and approached the waiting taxi, Jason jumped out of Frank's car, his voice dripping with contempt. "Wow, Mom, you really did it. A housewife divorcing a man like my dad. Let's see how long you last out there on your own." The insult stung, but not as much as it once would have. I had already begun to discover my own strength, a resilience I hadn't known I possessed. When I got home after the divorce was finalized, my parents were waiting with a hot meal, ready to celebrate. It was the first time in my life I had ever celebrated a divorce, and I had never felt so light, so free. My brother Mike surprised me by booking us all a trip to Napa Valley, a place my parents had always dreamed of visiting but never had the chance to. "This is for their travel expenses," he said, discreetly slipping a check for $120,000 into my hand. "Thank you for taking care of them during the trip. I've already arranged the hotels and transportation. You just relax and enjoy." Napa Valley was breathtaking. Every vineyard looked like a painting. My parents were glowing with happiness, and for the first time in years, I felt truly alive again, sipping wine in the afternoon sun, reading under olive trees, taking photos, laughing without guilt. Time finally belonged to me again. I had spent so many years pouring everything into my marriage, my son, and that house, often neglecting my own parents. Now, I had the chance to truly give back to them, to simply enjoy life together. My friend Susan came to the airport to see us off, hugging me tightly and teasing. When you get back, we're opening that studio we talked about, and you're going to be my business partner. And it wasn't just a casual suggestion, it was a promise, a vision of a future I had never dared to imagine for myself. After decades of being defined solely by my roles as wife and mother, I was rediscovering who Helen was beyond those labels. The transition wasn't without challenges. Frank had frozen all my bank accounts that contained money I had helped him earn through years of supporting his business ventures. 20 years, I've spoiled you too much, he said smugly over the phone. You want a divorce? Fine. Let me show you what life after divorce really feels like. The pettiness of his revenge only confirmed I'd made the right decision. I called my best friend Susan and asked her to wire me $50,000 just in case, which she did without hesitation. Men, she fumed. Every damn one of them turns into a bastard the second they get some money. They forget who stood by them when they had nothing. I also contacted a professional asset evaluator to assess what I was rightfully owed from our marriage. This house and that $150,000 SUV under your name, they're mine. I told Frank firmly. I stood by you from scratch, helped you host clients, manage social events, handle every detail of your life outside the office. You wouldn't have the success you do today without me. I deserve at least half the credit. His company's current market value was estimated at around $120 million. I didn't want shares, but I demanded $2.5 million in compensation, a fraction of what my contributions had been worth. Frank was livid. You're out of your mind. You've lost it completely, he barked, then told his assistant to get him a psychiatrist. She needs a mental health evaluation. His reaction didn't surprise me. When men can't control women through affection or manipulation, they often resort to questioning their sanity, but I wasn't backing down. I moved into my own house, the modest home my parents had left me, and installed a full smart home surveillance system. I told my brother Mike, if you don't hear from me for 24 hours, call the police immediately. We had once been husband and wife, but now I had to think like a survivor. As the months passed, I began selling everything that could be sold from my previous life. My clothes, jewelry, shoes, all the so-called treasures Frank had bought me over the years were nothing more than clearance items in my hands now. They had never truly been gifts. They were props for the perfect wife he wanted to display at business functions. I transferred all the money from these sales to Susan's account, ensuring Frank couldn't touch it. On New Year's Day, Susan and I officially opened our studio. That night, we sat in the garden sipping champagne, music playing softly, fireworks blooming across the city skyline. She raised her glass with a smile. Congratulations on finding yourself again. May the rest of your life belong only to you. I clinked glasses with her, feeling a sense of accomplishment and liberation I had never experienced before. Thanks to Susan's connections, the studio grew steadily, and we landed our first clients quickly. For the first time in my adult life, I was earning my own money, making my own decisions, and building something that belonged entirely to me. I was no longer Frank's wife or Jason's mother. I was Helen, a businesswoman, a friend, a daughter, a person with dreams and ambitions of my own. Frank still asks occasionally if I'd ever consider remarrying him. My answer remains unchanged, not in this lifetime. I was 50 when I filed for divorce, and it took me half a lifetime to finally see who Frank truly was, selfish to the core. I had given the best decades of my life to that household. Whatever time I had left was going to be mine, bold, vivid, uncompromising. Today, I look in the mirror and see a woman I barely recognized 3 years ago, confident, independent, and genuinely happy. The journey from silent wife to independent woman wasn't easy, but it was necessary. I had to lose the life I had built with Frank to find myself again. As I stand in our thriving studio, watching new clients come through the door, I know with absolute certainty that walking away was the bravest and wisest decision I ever made. The divorce papers weren't just the end of my marriage. They were the beginning of my freedom. For 30 years, I lived in the shadows of my own home. I cooked meals that went unappreciated, cleaned endlessly without acknowledgement, and cared for everyone while no one cared for me. When my daughter-in-law Amber poured my homemade soup down the drain and called me nothing more than the housemaid, my husband Frank and son Jason stood silently by. They watched as she insisted I wear disposable gloves to touch my own grandson, claiming I was filthy from cooking their meals. Despite all I had sacrificed, my career, my dreams, my very identity, they saw me as an afterthought, a convenience they only truly valued once I was gone. After I finally found the courage to leave, their perfectly ordered world collapsed. Without me, no one could care for Frank's mother, cook proper meals, or maintain the household. Frank, who had never touched a frying pan during our marriage, suddenly began cooking elaborate meals for Cynthia, posting them proudly on social media. When they begged me to return, I recognized the truth. They missed my service, not me. Mom, I'm sorry. I realize now without you, this family can't run. Jason pleaded, but I remained unmoved. You don't want me back. I told them plainly, you just want your maid. Today, at 50 years old, I've built a new life filled with purpose, friendship, and self-respect. Susan and I opened our studio, and as we celebrated with champagne on opening night, she toasted, "Congratulations on finding yourself again. May the rest of your life belong only to you." I never realized how profound those words would be, to have a life that truly belongs to me, after decades of belonging to everyone else. Friends, Helen's story has touched me deeply, and I believe it carries a profound lesson for all of us, especially those in our golden years. Sometimes the bravest thing we can do is walk away from situations where we're not valued, even after decades of investment. For 30 years, Helen poured herself into her family, maintaining a perfect home while her own identity slowly disappeared. Her story reminds us that it's never too late to reclaim your worth and start again. At 50, when many believe their best years are behind them, Helen discovered that life can begin anew at any age when you finally put yourself first. The hardest truth many of us face is recognizing when loyalty becomes self-destruction. Helen's journey teaches us that sometimes those closest to us, the very people we've sacrificed everything for, may never truly see our value until we're gone. And even then, they might only miss what we did for them, not who we truly are. But here's the beautiful truth. You are not defined by your role as someone's spouse, parent, or caretaker. You are a complete person with dreams, desires, and a right to happiness that exists independently of your service to others. Helen found this truth at 50, opening a business with her friend and building a life centered on her own joy rather than others' demands. If Helen's story resonated with you today, ask yourself, where in your life are you accepting less than you deserve? What dreams have you put aside to maintain relationships that drain rather than fulfill you? Remember, it's never too late to change your story. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Have you ever had to walk away from something comfortable but unfulfilling to find true happiness? Or perhaps you're contemplating such a change right now. Share your experiences in the comments below. Our community grows stronger when we learn from each other's journeys. And if you found value in Helen's powerful story of transformation, please consider subscribing to our channel for more life-affirming content designed specifically for our generation. Together, we're proving that our greatest chapters may still be waiting to be written. No matter our age, remember, the life you deserve begins the moment you believe you're worthy of more.